If you've ever had the chance to be here in the spring, you know this feeling. It's this sudden, almost magical explosion of violet as the jacaranda trees come to life, blanketing entire cities in a carpet of fallen flowers. But here is where our story takes its first incredible turn. The jacaranda is not native to Mexico. Not at all. Its home is thousands of miles away, in South America. The reason they're here is largely thanks to one man, a Japanese immigrant and master gardener named Tatsugura Matsumoto, who helped bring them to Mexico cities in the early 20th century. And just like that, an ancient feeling symbol becomes a very modern story of global connections. And once you know that, it changes how you see everything. Are you simply looking at nature? Or are you actually reading the pages of a history book, a book written in leaves and flowers? So to read this living map, we have to start at the very beginning. Long before any European ship ever saw these shores, this continent was already being profoundly shaped by human hands. A very different kind of map was being drawn across the land, one that was purely American. The great civilizations of Mesoamerica were, in fact, botanical civilizations. They had an incredibly deep, scientific understanding of the natural world, and for thousands of years they had been carefully, intentionally engineering the very ecology around them. Their entire world rested on a foundation of plants they had mastered. Of course, there was maize, the very basis of daily life. There was cacao, so valuable it was used as currency and a symbol of prestige. Cotton, which they wove into a complex economic infrastructure, and even the avocado. This wasn't some wild fruit they found. It was the product of multiple, highly precise domestications. This wasn't just gardening. This was science on a civilizational scale. And then, the Great Rupture. An invasion that came not just with swords and steel, but with seeds. You could say the first true wave of globalization was botanical, and it would redraw the map of Mexico forever. Now, this transformation didn't happen overnight. It came in waves. First, what you might call the Atlantic shock in the 1520s as European crops arrived to feed the colonists. Then came a period of consolidation as they tried to literally plant a new version of their homeland. And then, in 1565, something incredible happened. A bridge opened across the Pacific, and Mexico became a true global crossroads. These first arrivals were nothing short of strategic. Sugarcane and bananas showed up around 1525 and completely upended local economies. Wheat was so successful that just 10 years later, New Spain was already exporting it. We even have these amazing accounts of the conquistador Bernal Diaz del Castillo personally stopping to plant the very first orange seeds in Veracruz. But you have to understand, this wasn't just about finding things to eat. It was about transplanting an entire way of life. The Spanish were determined to recreate their world here, and they did it by planting what's called the Mediterranean triad: wheat for their bread, olive trees for their oil, and grapevines for their wine. They were literally trying to anchor their European identity in American soil, though, as they'd find out, the climate and royal politics would have something to say about that. But if you think the story is all about the Atlantic, you're only seeing half the map. The next incredible chapter in this story isn't about colonization, it's about connection. This is the chapter that turned Mexico into a global bridge, linking the Americas not just to Europe, but to Asia. For 250 years, the Manila galleon sailed a treacherous route between Acapulco and the Philippines. It was a silver trade route, yes, but it was also a biological highway. On those ships came a whole new world of Asian plants. Coconuts arrived and completely reshaped coastal life. Tamarind and ginger became staples of medicine and cooking. And the mango? Well, the mango arrived late, in 1792, and people were actually suspicious of it at first. They thought it caused fevers. It took a while before it became one of Mexico's most beloved fruits. So we've had indigenous engineering, and we've had imperial expansion. But the story doesn't stop there. As we head into the modern era, the 19th and 20th centuries, a completely new logic begins to shape the landscape. Plants are now being introduced as instruments of policy, of science, of industry. The reasons for bringing in new plants become incredibly specific. Take the eucalyptus, brought all the way from Australia in 1874. Why? Because of a scientific theory, which we now know is wrong, that its strong smell would sanitize the air and prevent malaria. Then you have the beautiful flamboyant tree from Madagascar, brought here for one reason, to look good and provide shade in cities. And later, buffalo grass from Africa, imported on an industrial scale simply to feed cattle. Nature was now something to be designed. But when humans try to design nature, it doesn't always go according to plan. And there's no better example of this than the water hyacinth, the Lidio aquario. It was brought here from the Amazon during the 19th century for a very simple reason. People thought its delicate lavender flowers were beautiful. And right here we see the incredible paradox, the danger of this global exchange. On one hand, the promise of beauty, a symbol of elegance. On the other, an absolute ecological catastrophe. The plant escaped. It spread with terrifying speed, forming these thick, choking mats on the water. It blocks all the sunlight, killing life below. It sucks the oxygen out of the water. It clogs canals, irrigation systems, even the intakes for hydroelectric dams. A delicate flower became a national disaster. So, after all these centuries of migration, conquest, science, and accidents, where can you see this entire sprawling history come together in one place? Well, it's simple. You go to a local market. Here, all of those global roots, all those imperial dreams and scientific plans, they all converge in one spectacular living display. Just look around you. Over on that stall, you see the mangoes, you see the sugarcane. That's Southeast Asia, right there. The ghost of those Pacific galleons. Walk a few feet, and you smell it. The fresh bread, made from European wheat. You see the figs. That's the taste of the Mediterranean, an echo carried across the Atlantic. And then, that aroma, coffee, a bean that began its journey in the highlands of Ethiopia, sitting right next to bananas that trace their own long history back through Africa and Asia. But then, right at the center of it all, grounding everything, you find the originals, the ancient foundations of this land. Cacao, avocados, maize. They are holding court in this incredible global assembly. And you realize, a market is so much more than a place to buy food. It is geography you can taste. Every single fruit tells the story of a trade route. Every aroma is a whisper of a forgotten empire. And every single seed you see is the result of a human decision made somewhere, sometime, in history. So the next time you walk down a street in Mexico City beneath a shower of jacaranda petals, or you wander through the aisles of a market, remember what you're really seeing. You're not just looking at a landscape. You're standing in a library. You're not just in a place. You are walking across a living map of the entire world, where every single root and every single leaf has a story to tell. Basta. This is Mexico.
If something here opened a door, stay and subscribe. Basta is the second look. Mexico without the filter, without the shortcuts. New episodes every third day. See our suggested video in the box.